Imagine this: you finally buy your dream ranch, acres of open land, peace and quiet, the perfect escape from the noise of the world. But just when you start settling in, a corrupt HOA you never even agreed to starts creeping in. They trespass on your property, vandalize parts of your land, and then, the real kicker, they forge legal documents claiming you're under their control. Before you know it, you're being sued for breaking rules you never signed up for. But what they didn't count on was that I'd fight back. And when I did, I didn't just defend my land, I destroyed them in court. Welcome back to Voice of Tales, where real-life stories of revenge, justice, and karma come to life in the most satisfying ways. Today's tale is no exception. It's about standing up to a corrupt HOA and watching justice unfold in a courtroom showdown. If you love stories where the little guy fights back and wins big, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more epic takedowns and power trippers getting exactly what they deserve. Life on my ranch was everything I'd ever dreamed of: peaceful, wide open, and far from the chaos of the city. The mornings started with the sound of birds and the occasional lowing of cattle, and the evenings ended with golden sunsets over the rolling fields. I spent my days tending to the land, working with my animals, and soaking in the serenity that only rural living can provide. It was quiet, honest work, and the ranch was more than just property. It was home, freedom, and the result of years of hard work and saving. Little did I know, that peace was about to be shattered by the very people who were supposed to protect the neighborhood, the HOA. I've always been the kind of person who keeps to themselves, respectful of others, quiet, and just looking to enjoy a bit of peace. I wasn't throwing parties, blasting music, or disrupting anyone's life. All I wanted was privacy, and the freedom to live simply on my own land. I maintained my property meticulously, followed the law, and never once caused trouble for my neighbors. That's what made what happened next so shocking, because despite doing everything right, the HOA decided I was a problem. And they came at me with everything they had. Owning my own land was one of the proudest accomplishments of my life. I worked hard, saved diligently, and finally purchased a beautiful stretch of rural property with clearly marked boundaries and legal documentation to back every inch of it. This wasn't just a house, it was my sanctuary. A place where I could breathe, build, and live without interference. The fence lines were well maintained, the survey maps were accurate, and there was no doubt where my property began and ended. That's why it hit so hard when the HOA started acting like they had some kind of claim over it, as if they could just waltz in and decide otherwise. At first, everything was calm, until a new HOA formed just outside my area. It started as a group of newer residents trying to beautify the neighborhood, and before I knew it, they'd expanded their influence, redrawing informal boundaries and claiming authority they didn't actually have. They were suddenly holding meetings, sending out letters, and trying to impose their rules on properties that were never under their jurisdiction, including mine. I wasn't part of their subdivision, I didn't sign any agreement, and my land was privately owned long before their HOA ever existed. But that didn't stop them from trying to pull me into their little empire. I never signed up for their HOA, not once. In fact, my property was never even included in their development plan. I did my homework when I bought the ranch, and I made sure the land was free from any restrictive covenants or homeowner associations. My deed, title, and all the legal records prove it. My ranch sits completely outside their jurisdiction. So when they started acting like they had control over me, sending letters, demanding changes, and quoting rules that didn't apply, I knew it wasn't just annoying. It was completely baseless. They had no legal authority over my land, and I wasn't going to let them pretend otherwise. Despite having no legal claim over my property, the HOA started acting like they ran the place. Out of nowhere, I began receiving letters stuffed in my mailbox, demanding dues, citing made-up violations, and telling me I needed to bring my fencing up to code. It was laughable at first, like some overreaching mistake. But then it escalated. They tried enforcing noise ordinances, sent me notices about my livestock, and even threatened fines for not landscaping according to their community guidelines. Guidelines that didn't apply to me. It was clear they either didn't understand the law, or were banking on me not knowing my rights. But what they didn't realize was, I knew exactly how much power they didn't have. Things took a dark turn when HOA reps actually trespassed onto my land under the excuse of conducting an inspection. One afternoon, I spotted two people walking along my fence line with clipboards, snapping photos like they had every right in the world to be there. They didn't knock, didn't ask, and certainly didn't have permission. When I confronted them, they claimed they were documenting violations for the board, as if my ranch fell under their control. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just overreach. This was an attempt to bully and intimidate me into submission. But I don't take kindly to trespassers, especially not ones trying to claim power they don't legally have. Things escalated quickly. One morning, I caught a couple of HOA reps snooping around my barn, like they were casing the place. That alone was enough to get my blood boiling, but it got worse. They had installed unauthorized signs at the edge of my driveway that read, HOA regulated property, as if they had jurisdiction here. I even found evidence they'd trimmed some of my trees, claiming they were too close to the road, according to their so-called landscaping rules. My land. My trees. My rights. It was outrageous. They were acting like they owned the place, and I wasn't about to let it slide. When I confronted them about their unauthorized trespassing and the signs they put up on my land, they didn't even flinch. One of them, clipboard in hand and full of smug attitude, told me I was in violation of community standards. I asked them what community, because I sure didn't remember joining one. But they kept pushing, claiming their HOA authority extended to my property and that I was now subject to their rules, including dues, appearance regulations, and landscaping guidelines. It was like arguing with a brick wall, except this wall thought it could rewrite property law with enough audacity. I refused to let them push me around. I calmly walked back into my house, grabbed the deed to my property, and showed them clear as day, my ranch was never part of their HOA jurisdiction. No agreements. No signatures. Nothing. I made it crystal clear, they had no authority over me or my land, and I told them, in no uncertain terms, to stay off my property. They didn't like that one bit, but it didn't matter. I had the paperwork, the boundaries, and the law on my side. This was my land, and I wasn't going to be bullied off it. Out of nowhere, I received a legal notice from the HOA, and my jaw hit the floor when I saw what they were claiming. Attached to the notice were documents supposedly showing that I had voluntarily agreed to join their HOA and abide by all their rules. But the thing is, I never signed anything like that. As I looked closer, the signature didn't even match mine, and the dates were all wrong. That's when it hit me, they had forged the documents. They were actually trying to fake their way into having control over my land. That wasn't just overreach anymore, that was fraud. And I knew right then, I was going to take this all the way to court. After sending the forged documents, the HOA doubled down and actually filed a lawsuit against me. They accused me of noncompliance with their so-called community guidelines, claimed I had caused property damage on my own land, and even tried to slap me with thousands of dollars in bogus fines. It was outrageous. They were trying to bully me into submission using legal pressure, hoping I'd back down or settle. But what they didn't know was that I had every document, every photo, and every piece of proof I needed to expose them in court, and I wasn't going to roll over for their fraud. I was absolutely shocked and furious. I couldn't believe the audacity. This wasn't just petty HOA drama anymore, this was outright fraud. They had trespassed on my property, tampered with my land, and now they were trying to use fake documents to drag me through the legal system. It felt personal. They thought I'd panic or cave under pressure, but all they did was light a fire in me. I knew right then that I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to expose everything they had done. So I hired a lawyer, someone who specialized in property disputes and HOA overreach. From the moment I laid out everything, including the forged documents and unauthorized trespassing, they were stunned at how blatantly the HOA had crossed the line. My lawyer immediately started gathering evidence: security footage, dated property records, even drone shots showing the actual boundaries. We weren't just going to fight this, we were going to dismantle their entire case piece by piece, and make sure the court saw just how far the HOA had gone. I got to work collecting every shred of evidence I could find. First, I pulled surveillance footage from the cameras around my property, clearly showing the HOA reps trespassing without permission. Then I gathered my property records, the original deed, plat maps, and county documents, all time-stamped and legally binding, proving without a doubt that my land was never part of their jurisdiction. I even tracked down archived documents showing that I had never signed or agreed to any HOA terms. With all this in hand, I was ready to walk into court not just with a defense, but with a case strong enough to expose the HOA's lies from the ground up. As my lawyer and I dug deeper, we discovered something shocking: clear proof that the HOA had altered and possibly backdated documents to make it look like I had agreed to their terms. One of the supposed agreements they submitted had a signature that didn't match mine, and the date listed was from before I even bought the property. Metadata from the file and inconsistencies in the paperwork exposed the forgery. It was a blatant attempt to rewrite history and force me under their control. That's when we knew this wasn't just a petty power move. It was full-blown fraud, and we were ready to bring it all to light in court. When the day of the court hearing finally arrived, the HOA came in smug and overconfident, strutting in like they already owned the verdict. They presented their so-called evidence, the forged paperwork they claimed proved I had agreed to join their association. But the moment those documents hit the judge's bench, the cracks began to show. Dates didn't align with public property records, signatures didn't match, and the formatting looked suspiciously inconsistent with their official templates. It was like watching a poorly rehearsed play fall apart in real time. I sat calmly, knowing we had the real evidence, and they were about to get exposed. My lawyer took the floor with the kind of calm confidence that only comes when you know the truth is on your side. Piece by piece, he dismantled every false claim the HOA had made. He presented time-stamped property records, surveillance footage of them trespassing, and expert analysis confirming the forged documents were altered after the fact. He even brought in a handwriting specialist who confirmed the signature on the so-called agreement wasn't mine. It wasn't just a defense, it was a complete takedown. By the time he finished, the courtroom was silent, and the HOA board members looked like they wanted to disappear. The judge didn't need long to see through the lies. As soon as the evidence was laid out, their expression changed from neutral to visibly irritated. They called out the blatant inconsistencies in the HOA's forged documents, pointing out mismatched dates, altered signatures, and how the supposed agreement contradicted county property records. But what really sealed it was the trespassing. The judge was furious that a group claiming to represent community values had violated private property and tampered with legal boundaries. In no uncertain terms, the judge slammed the HOA for their reckless abuse of power, calling their actions an egregious violation of legal ethics and property rights. In the end, justice was served. The judge not only dismissed every false claim against me but also ordered the HOA to pay fines for their misconduct, including trespassing, document forgery, and harassment. My name was cleared completely, and I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high, while the HOA's reputation was left in ruins. Local news even picked up the story, and the community rallied around me, realizing how close they had come to falling victim to the same corruption. What started as an attempt to bully me off my own land turned into a full-blown reckoning for an out-of-control HOA. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Once the court ruled in my favor and exposed the HOA's lies, their leadership began to crumble. The president resigned under pressure, followed by several board members trying to distance themselves from the scandal. It was a total collapse from the inside. Members who once backed their aggressive tactics now turned on each other, trying to avoid legal repercussions. With their credibility in shambles and legal fees piling up, the HOA's grip on the neighborhood was broken. People who once feared their power suddenly saw them for what they were, a group of bullies who got caught playing with fire. After the dust settled, something unexpected happened. My neighbors, some of whom had been quiet throughout the ordeal, began to reach out. They thanked me for standing my ground and exposing the HOA's corruption. Many had felt bullied for years but were too afraid to speak up. Some even shared their own horror stories of intimidation and unfair fines. One by one, people came forward with support, offering handshakes, baked goods, and even help around the ranch. What started as a personal battle turned into a community victory, and for the first time, it felt like the neighborhood was truly united. In the courtroom, once my lawyer presented the original, time-stamped property deeds and surveillance footage, the forged documents fell apart under scrutiny. The judge examined the supposed signatures and dates, comparing them to official county records, and it became crystal clear: the HOA had faked them. With a stern tone, the judge declared the documents null and void, stripping them of any legal standing. The moment was a turning point. Not only was my name cleared, but the HOA's entire argument collapsed right there in front of everyone. It was official: their lies held no power. With the forged documents invalidated and the court fully siding in my favor, I finally regained complete, undisputed control of my property. The trespassing stopped. The fake inspection signs were removed. No more letters, no more threats, no more fabricated rules from a power-hungry HOA that never had jurisdiction to begin with. I could walk my land again without watching my back, knowing I had defended not just my rights, but the principle of honest ownership. The peace I'd always wanted, the quiet, the freedom, the dignity, was mine again, and this time, it was protected by the weight of the law. Sometimes, fighting back isn't about yelling louder, it's about being smarter. The HOA came after me armed with arrogance, fake authority, and forged paperwork, thinking I'd back down like so many others before me. But I didn't shout. I didn't lose control. I gathered facts. I built my case. And when the time came, I let the truth speak for itself. In the end, their lies crumbled in court, and justice wasn't just served, it was delivered with precision. If you enjoyed this story of courtroom revenge and sweet justice, don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps us out. Share your favorite moment in the comments below, we love hearing your thoughts and reactions. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Voice of Tales for more real-life stories where the good guys stand their ground, the Karens get exposed, and karma always finds a way to deliver a satisfying ending.